handheld tooling. This would take a 1/4 by 1 bar, and by running it through here, you'd wind up with a groove 1/4 inch in on each side with rounded corners.
Yeah, you got a large selection of those.
Yeah, and a lot of dies where this is sort of like a bullet-shaped piece. So you take a round bar, put it in there, forge it, and it preforms a piece that then when you flatten it, makes a leaf. You kind of want to keep your piece contained as much as possible, because once you get a part beyond 1 to 3 thickness to width, you can't bring it back into itself. You know, you can imagine if a piece finally got to be thin as a piece of paper, you couldn't stand it up on edge and hit it, it would buckle.
Yeah.
So when you're first breaking your piece down, you want to stay in that 1 to 3 ratio. You want to kind of keep your piece contained, turning, reducing it, and then at the end, if you have to flatten it and get it thin, that's when you take it to dimension.
This is not the part for a John Deere tractor, as I told you. This is a part of a Maisel
forging hammer.
Forging hammer that they are repairing.
We're making new guides for it. And then
see, I was fooled by the green.
Typically, when they run in a certain height according to the kind of work people do, and it'll get worn. The cylinders will get kind of bell-shaped. Sure. The ram gets kind of tapered. So we'll remachine the flats, remachine the dovetail. Originally, they were a very close fit, and they just had a ring cut in it. There was an oil collector, and that was enough to make a seal for them to operate, because they're relatively low air pressure, high volume. And a lot of times to compensate for the bell-shaped bore, we'll cut and put a ring onto a ram.
And how old are these machines? Are these
started about late 1800s? I think they finished up probably in about the early 60s.
So this one would be a later one, though.
This one was probably 30s, in the 30s, yeah.
Oh, from the 30s, yeah. From the 1930s. And how about the other big one there?
That might be a little bit older.
Yeah.
20s.
So they're 80 years old.
Yeah. They went through a series of ownership. That's partly how you tell. They went to Lobdell, and then United Engineering was the last company that had a sideline piece. We had a job to remove, sandblast, and refinish some railings that were set in lead. That was an old way of putting a railing into stone.
Yes, I've seen that done.
And the problem was how to get them out. So Terry came up with this idea of clamping around the bar and then having these ears sticking out down below, and a square piece of tubing that fit down on top of that with a slot in it, a hydraulic jack on the top, and put chain on them and just jacked them right out.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of railings set in lead. And this is the ram now.
This is not this is a ram.
A ram.
Actually a bigger one.
Okay. So.
All right, and here what you see is we have to weld, regroove. Here was the original oil collector grooves. That was enough to make the seal, and here is typically what we'll do to put a ring into it so that it can expand and contract in a tapered bore. So what is the problem on most of these hammers is not the downstroke. You got something to stop it. It's the upstroke. That it doesn't become a self-destructive machine beating itself up on the top.
Yeah.
So what it has here is this internal bore with a hole at the bottom. And now I'll come over to what fits into that. Sit down over it. As you approach the top surface, the plug engages the hole, and now you start to build compression, and that's your cushion on the upstroke.
Yep. Okay. Compression.
Here is your, on the outside, the ram head is coming down, your compression, external compression, and feeding out here. That's one place the valve will send it according to, that's your waste air for when you're just coming up and parking. It's all tied up here now. But
This is a copy torch.
Heath Ultragraph. You mount a tin pattern up here, and this has a magnetic driven knurled knob that crawls around the pattern, and your torch or your plasma cutter follows along on the bottom.
I have seen these in operation.
Yeah, this is probably 50s, 60s generation.
Okay.
But again, if we have a limited production, a lot of times we'll burn out leaves and then take them and hand shape them and texture them and all. But you know, the handicraft isn't in running a bandsaw. It's the shaping and dishing and doming and texturing that's.
Now, some of the work, such as that table, is that commissioned?
That's commissioned.
Yeah.
Almost all of our bigger, fancier jobs are commissioned.
And do you get that from private customers or from architects or designers?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. We
All of
prefer
the
to work
above.
directly with homeowners.
Yeah.
That's the easiest.
And these would be expensive items. This
Yes.
isn't something
Yes.
that would be the average person, but in better homes and people that are, wealthier people that want something special.
That's true, but we still make a railing for Mrs. Olson in Blanchardville because her neighbors won't come visit her anymore. if they want it plain, we'll make it plain, but it will be sturdy and well made. There's
Yes.
a certain level that I won't go below.
So you mean it would be heavier than what you get at Menards?
You don't push it to make the slope.
Yeah.
This is a classic old American bandsaw, a Marvel number 8 roll-in style saw. You ever seen one of these?
I had a little Marvel draw saw that I saw at the high school, but nothing like that.
This goes up. You can saw 18 by 18 with this, and the head tilts. So you can do all your mitering on here without having to swing your stock around.
What's the vintage on this machine?
This is probably 46.
Okay.
Still make them.
Under that name, Armstrong Blum?
Armstrong Blum.
I didn't know they were still in business.
Yep. Well, I don't know either, but
Yeah, probably bought out 3 times. But.
Here's some of that example of that hammered stock that he's making on the table. Kind of a random welded pattern. And then here's examples of handrails, special handrail. Now that was made somewhere around here. Started out as a half round, and then slowly fed through a die to achieve that shape.
That's a heavy rail.
Yeah. Here's another custom handrail profile, kind of an oval hammer texture.
So that was all shaped here, not from a
This
mill.
is shaped from a round bar.
Yeah.
They want the hammer texture on it.
Yeah.
These were cut off of here and used on a wine cellar grape.
Oh, it's
leaf
like a
thing.
bunch of grapes.
Yep. Wood grain.
And tapered.
Yeah. Right, did you notice this thing back here? Another American classic.
Like this is the compressor?
Air compressor.
Wow.
Just do a lot of sandblasting.
What's the diameter of the piston?
I'm guessing 12, 14 inches.
12 or 14 inch
Yeah.
piston, and look at the wheel there.
Yeah. Runs smooth, quiet, puts out 185 cubic feet of air. Look at the tank that came with it. The riveted tank.
Yeah. And it's not rusted through.
No. I think it's 1/4 inch thick.
Yeah.
Yeah. This also is headed to the junkyard.
And you saved it from the scrap man.
Yeah. I can fire it up if you want to.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we're going to fire this up. It might get noisy. There's the motor. Pretty quiet for as big a machine as it is, and I can feel the floor vibrating.
Then they're bent cold in the press on these aluminum blocks so you don't stuff it up.
Oh, this is aluminum.
Yep. You kind of get into aluminum and scarf.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And here you can see he's hammered back into it, into what's called upsetting, to make it more like a branch, you know, natural shape rather than the saw cut end. So
Well,
you can make this thicker as well as reduce it.
well, how many of these tables are there going to be?
4, I think.
Okay. So that's a lot of material.
Yeah. Constantly weld fixtures down to it to bend around, and sometimes mount a hydraulic cylinder on here.
Yes, so.
And what's nice is it's heavy enough that if you beat on it, it doesn't bust your eardrums.
That's about 12 foot long.
Yeah.
And about, what, 1.25 inches thick or so?
Yeah, inch 3/8, I think. Yeah. Here, paint booth. Sandblasting out back.
Yeah, what's the booth?
Paint booth.
The paint booth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just, to isolate all the flammable
that
stuff.
looks like it's big enough to paint a car. That's why
Yeah, it was a standard Binks booth. And something, I don't know if you noticed here, the whole building is jacked up 4 feet on a concrete wall.
Oh, yeah.
And that was for fireproofing. Your kind of line of fire is waist high. Plus it gave us headroom on the crane.
Yeah, I know it's very high ceiling.
Yeah, you get a lot of drop on the crane. So we have 20 foot headroom in here. And there are times we need that because we'll make a drum for a fancy spiral stair that we erect from here.
Right,
Yeah.
Now, I had a hospital at the school, but it was, I believe, smaller than this.
Yeah, this is a 2.
This is a 2, then I would have had the 1.
Yeah, very, very handy tool.
Yeah. I loved it at the high school, but it was something I always had to set up for the kids. We had a book and everything for it, but it's a little difficult, especially for a one-of bend, and then you had to do samples sometimes.
We work a lot of right up on top here, and it's just like a huge bending fork, or you put a round bar on there. We do a lot of quick setups, just drop something up on top.
Yeah.
Or a piece
I had
of
a whole
pipe.
series of bushings and bearings that I made, and I had this, only it was a little smaller piece than that. Yeah, these were very well built and ingenious machines.
They were built by a blacksmith. Probably he needed one and then found it handy enough to sell.
Yeah, no wonder.
Yeah.
I wonder, are they still in business, do you know?
Yes, definitely.
They are.
Here's a machine we make. This is a little blacksmith power hammer called a KA75, air operated. Oh, we don't have air today.
No air on today, so we won't get a demonstration on
But
this.
there's a website that has a lot of videos of this
Oh,
running.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'll give you the link to that website later on
Okay.
on the screen here.
And what we did on that, here's a job. I had to make a bunch of axes. And this was punching the eye for the axe.
Wow. Is that tool steel?
Actually, we welded a tool steel edge onto
Oh,
it.
okay. You'll have a tool steel edge that
Yeah.
can be heat treated.
Yeah. Gas forges here. This is a Johnson slot furnace. Fire comes in through these orifices here. You can run 2, 3, or 4, and you can work crossways or lengthways, or swing the top out and put a piece of plate on top of it and get a piece of plate hot. And this is another gas forge here. For a little bigger, heavier material. This is a temperature controlled that we use for aluminum and bronze. You can't get it, you don't want to get it too hot. Here's a pair of log tongs. Here's some links.
Awesome.
I upset an area first, so I punched the hole. This is the area that's going to be weak. So I made sure that's extra thick by upsetting it, then punch the hole. And by flattening them, twisting them this little bit, they won't cross over and lock up. Just a tip an old timer showed me.
And there aren't many of the old timers anymore because you're one of them now.
Getting there. Getting there.
Bob's just a couple years younger than me.
Here's an example of making some ornamental profiled material in an open face die out of round stock.
You're doing some beautiful work in this shop, I'll tell you that. Bob saws lumber, and this is for sharpening his bandsaw blade.
This is actually for setting it.
Setting it, all right.
Yeah. And then the sharpeners over there. Still got a shaper.
Oh, you got a shaper.
Still got a shaper. Well, a lot of this older material has dovetails, and that's, you know, the easiest way to make dovetail on one of these. Although what we found that really works the best to get a shell mill cut into a dovetail.
I'll be darned.
That's what we found really works the best. Because you'll see on the ram, we can get into that slot, that internal slot on the ram with this. On the horizontal mill, have it laid out. And take a pass and clean up the dovetail. And then come up, tip it either 1 degree or 1/8 inch to a foot, whatever the taper is for the key, and come back and cut the other side and get the bottom at the same time.
What proportion of your business is in the machine shop here? Would it be
I would say a third.
about a third of machine work?
In machinery repair. That includes welding, the hydraulic cylinders. Yeah.
Sure.
I'd say about a third ornamental and another third selling tools and equipment.